Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the Talking Exports webinar. I'm very pleased to have you all online with us today for what is another session. We've actually got a four-part series on fashion that we're going to be focusing on and marketing for fashion businesses. But before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty of fashion and photography, I just want to give a quick overview as to who Caribbean Export is. For those of you that may not be familiar with us so far. So, first of all, I should actually also introduce myself. My name is Noel and I'm going to be your host for today. I'm the Senior Advisor for PR and Marketing at Caribbean Export. Now, at Caribbean Export, we work across 15 CARIFORUM countries. So we do a number of different program activities to support businesses across a number of sectors, and fashion is just one of them. Some of you may be familiar with the Caribbean Fashion Showroom, which is our platform that we have, our online platform that we developed to support, really highlighting the designers in the Caribbean. Now, this platform, obviously you can see it there. You will be able to access it through Caribbean Fashion Showroom online, and you'll be able to find a number of different designers from the Caribbean, and also see various opportunities to be supported by Caribbean Export. Now today, as I mentioned, we are going to be, you're here to talk about Brand Photography 101. This is our first of our four-part series, and we have the esteemed Fern Elise from Stush Marketing, and also Fee Noel from Fee Noel. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to have them both with us today. As you may be aware, Stush Marketing worked with us on a webinar previously on marketing, and it's great to have them back on board again to support and deliver this four-part series. On Thursday, we will be looking at how to build loyal customers on and offline with Tamia Carey, who is also another lead in the owner of Stush Marketing. But without further ado, I really think it's important for us to kind of really get to the nitty-gritty, and I'm sure you're all dying to hear from Fee Noel. As I mentioned, so we're obviously honoured to have Fee with us today. Fee is a women's wear designer from Brooklyn, New York. She has a passion for travel, a love of vibrant colours, and also bold prints. Now, she actually entered the industry at the young age of just 19 years old, opening a brick and mortar boutique in the heart of Brooklyn, selling vintage clothing for vintage lovers and trendsetters across Brooklyn. I mean, the boutique itself served as a catalyst for today's namesake and lifestyle women's wear brand Fee Noel, and further stimulated her desire to help women embrace their femininity. Now, Fee is heavily influenced by her Caribbean heritage, which is Grenadian, I do believe, and she comes from a large, close-knit family. So I'd like to, obviously welcome Fee to this webinar. And Fee, can you tell us, how did you get started with the online business? Because obviously you started off in bricks and mortar. How did you transition into the online space?
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And it's interesting, I did start off in a brick and mortar business, and it was during my time there is when I launched a brand, which was named something completely different, which I'm taking to the grave. And not until 2015 is when I decided to name the name after myself. And this is just the short knit story of that. But I decided to create, everyone would call me Fee. And that's when I decided to name it Fee Noel, because it was more powerful than the name I had before, and someone actually suggested it. So it was while at the boutique, probably in the third year of the boutique, when I was like, I started designing and I started creating clothes to sell out of the boutique. At the time, I was a young woman and I was going out and I wanted to dress a certain way, and I couldn't really find any brands in the showrooms I was buying from that walked that line between sexy and classy that I wanted. So even at a young age, I kind of knew what I wanted my aesthetic to be and hone in on that. And that's really what birthed the brand at the time and where I started with the brand. So I was still in the boutique when I started the brand, and that was the first place that I was actually selling the brand before I even became an online store. I was selling it out of the boutique. So I started building up my I guess clientele base from there, you know.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's great. I mean, you started off yourself, and I understand that you were a self-taught designer, so to speak. So tell us about how you kind of went through that process.
I mean, it sounds so crazy thinking back on it. And I guess I want to say the younger you are, the more fearless you are. So I didn't think of all the technicalities to creating a brand. I was just like, oh, I want to start a brand and thinking of any way that I can do that. And at the time, um, there was a manufacturer in the city, and I would have the ideas and she would make them for me. And that's kind of where it started. So I wasn't coming from a Caribbean household. When I said I was going to do fashion as my career, that I got the like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're going to do fashion? Like, no, you're not. You're going to go be an accountant or a lawyer or a teacher. There's no, fashion is too risky. So I didn't end up, I wanted to go to fashion school, to college, but at the time it was just like such a taboo. So I ended up going to school for finance. But even my first year in college is when the boutique came about. So even then I was like, oh, I need to drop out of school. I already know, I already have my life planned out, you know? And even then it was like, no, no, no. If you're gonna live under, my mom would say, if you're gonna live in my roof, under my roof, this is what you're gonna go to school for, this is what you're gonna do. As you can see, I never became an accountant. I still pursued my dream. So I did go to school. I did get my degree in finance, but I still continued my career as fashion. So it was really hard having to just learn the hard way. I had to learn the hard way. I spent a lot of time around people who were in the business and who knew the business and who got to go to school for it. And that's really how I learned, through trial and error. I'm still learning. I always say, oh, if I went to school, I would have been so much further. But then, of course, you know, like things work out the way it's supposed to. Because someone once told me, they were like, if you would have went to school, you would have been afraid to start the brand because in school they teach you all these things, and you feel like you'll never feel like you have what it takes to actually just go ahead and just do it. So I guess it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't know all the things it took to start a brand, so it never hindered me. I just always thought like, oh, I can do this because I didn't really, ignorance was bliss, so to speak. So that was my blessing in disguise, I want to say.
Well, that's good because I know how it can be. You know, sometimes you go down a different path and you don't follow your passion as such. But we hope, you know, it's really important. I think it's important for people to follow their passions. That some people don't obviously always get the opportunity to do that, but if you can, you know, a teacher of mine once told me, you know, once you enjoy something, you'll become good at it, you know. And I think obviously that's testament to obviously what you've clearly done. You've enjoyed the design and you learn along the way. So, I mean, where were we? We were talking about following your passion and getting things right, trial and error, how you actually obviously started your business, self-teaching and so on. Now, we've got a lot of designers from across the region that may well not have access to the level of capital that some people need. They may not have been in a similar position to yourself and may not have gone to a technical college and studied fashion design, but they're fantastic creatives and fantastic designers and are learning as they go along. What would you say were some of the key things that you could kind of impart on them? You know, I'm sure there's some aspects you think, well, maybe I wish I hadn't focused on that particular aspect so much, or what are the creative ways you thought outside of the box in order for you to kind of get to where you are today?
Well, I always love this question because it always reminds me that I didn't start with any money. You know, I started with an idea, and that idea it was, I wish I would told myself then, like, one idea is just enough, like one product, just one thing is just enough to start on the journey, because sometimes that stops you when you can't create in the beginning what you see in your head. And what no one ever tells you is like, well, start where you are with what you have and do the best with what you have, and that's going to take you to the next level. That's all you need to go as you go. I am a strong believer in the bootstrapping method, and the easiest way for me to break it down so that any designers listening, they can, you know, have something to think about tonight, and a real lesson is just make one product. You know, find something to do to be able to build up some sort of, I don't want to say capital because I don't want it to sound like a large lump sum of money. If your first sample is going to take $100, bake cookies or do something, think outside of the box. How do you get to making your first sample? And if you think about steps like that, you find it easier to start on your journey, and you find it easier to start. So many people don't start because they're always thinking about what they don't have. It's very few people that say, okay, this is what I do have. So what can I do, even if it's not the exact thing I want to do, what can I do with what I have right now in this very moment just to start? The hardest part is starting, you know, just, and then you don't realize it until so much time has passed and things start to get in flow and things start to happen. When you start doing, things are going to start to happen. Things are going to, you can be walking, and this sounds so far-fetched, but an example, you walk down the street and you find $20 and your website domain costs $20. You know, it's like things like little things like that I've noticed has happened in my life once I just started to really see like what I have in front of me and using what I had, what that was. And for instance, make one t-shirt. If you have an idea for a dress, but you don't have the funds to make the dress, make a t-shirt, sell it to 2 or 3 people, you know, create a story behind it. You have to think outside of the box to get your idea off the ground, because unfortunately, it is really hard to, one, get people to fund your dream because only you can see it, and 2, to run a business and to build the capital to run such business. Now there is some people that can raise capital to fund a business, but that's not, most times, coming from where I come from, that's not our story. We have to bootstrap it ourselves, and we have to do it ourselves. And my grandmother would always say, whatever you have right there to put in that pot to make your soup or to cook your dinner or to do it, use that. And you're gonna, at the end of it, you're gonna realize that it was just fine. It was just enough to get you through the night. You know what I mean? And that's, I apply that to my daily life. It's gonna be just to get you to the next step. Now we are. Well,
I hear
after me get here. I know that when I first started. So.
Okay, so I mean, it's great to have you here, and I think, and obviously hear your story. And I think one of the major accomplishments that we heard is obviously that you designed shoes for LeBron James. We've heard that your outfits, your clothing have been worn by Michelle Obama, by Beyonce, Gabrielle Union, to name a few. I mean, how do you come from, you know, from where you are to having those A-listers essentially wearing your clothing?
Maybe that's a question for God. I don't know. How did I get here? You know, well, I'll start with the LeBron shoes. Being one of the first women to design, or that's the only women's shoe that he's had. And I did it with 2 other young ladies. It was a collaborative shoe that was a tribute to his mother. I didn't even dream, you know, I was just designing. I never imagined designing a sneaker I never even thought about it. I didn't even know I could dream that dream, right? So that came from out of nowhere, from me just working and being in the business and keeping my head down, and an opportunity I was working with HFR, Holland's Fashion Row at the time, and she presented the opportunity. But I said yes before I even knew what it was, right? It was like this big secret thing. You have to say yes, you have to sign this paper, and then we'll tell you. And I was probably nosy. I'm like, well, I want to know what it is. Like, I'm not going to turn it down. So I did sign, and it ended up being to design a shoe for him. And that was just like a gift because I didn't even dream that dream. I had no idea I'd be able to do something like that. And it was the most amazing experience. I'm so happy to have that in my portfolio and to be able to say to my son, like, oh, I designed a sneaker for one of the greatest basketball players in the world, you know? And then to go from there to Michelle Obama, which was the most amazing experience to see her walk across the stage in a Noel design. Um, I can't even describe it. The news got to Grenada in 0.4 seconds. Everyone was crying and screaming, and it was an absolute wonderful feeling of some sort of like you've arrived feeling, I want to say, to have such a leading woman, such an important woman in history wearing it. So how did I get there is hard work, you know, authenticity, being true to who I am. I'm very specific. I don't let everyone, you know, there's a lot of things where you're like dressing celebrities, and I really like to connect with women who I feel like this is my woman. You know, she represents everything that I believe. And as you know, Michelle Obama's on that list, Beyonce is on that list. Um, I want to believe that I wheeled it in, you know, like I just writing it down and talking about it because that was a dream of mine. You know, remember I said the sneaker, I couldn't even dream that dream. Having Michelle, I can't even recall how many little notepads I wrote that like I want Michelle Obama to wear, you know, for years and years. If I open my little notepad, see her name, I would always name like who the female woman, what she would be like, and just her place in the world. And her name was always in there. So I would like to believe just with my hard work and really focusing and having just the right people around me, it brought this in my life because it was so crazy. I was with a friend and she was like, I can see Michelle Obama walking across the stage in a Noel pants. And she wrote that. She wrote that to Michelle Obama's stylist. And when she wrote that in a sort of like short story narrative, her stylist responded. And that's how that happened. The same with Beyonce's stylist, who's very in tune with emerging designers coming up and always looking for the new. I wrote her and she responded as well. So it's just about, I want to say, in a short version, it's like really working hard and believing in yourself, but knowing what you want, like knowing what to ask for and what you want, because you can't really get what you don't ask for sometimes. You have to be sometimes even down to the detail of these are my women. I want to dress them. I want to see them in my clothes. And just even speaking that into the universe is powerful. And I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. So
yeah, same here actually. So tell us about where your inspiration comes from. Obviously you have good Caribbean heritage. Talk to us a little bit about your inspiration, and I'm using this as a segue to kind of move on to the next segment with Fern, so be prepared, Fern. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration.
So I come from a family of just like beautiful, strong women who are just like bosses and create the life that they want to live. So that's where my first, just when I thought about who I would just be designing for, and when I think about the woman that I want to be, that's my first inspiration. My second is I take inspiration from so many different things, but the core that remains constant is my Caribbean heritage. And what I love about that is that you can't really put it into a box. It's vibrant, it's free spirited, it's just has its own aesthetic and its own power and just in its own right. And I infuse that into every aspect of the brand, into all my storytelling, into even how I think. That's where I pull my inspiration from. And it can be different things as color palettes. Like I'm in Grenada all the time, and it's color palettes and the way, the carefree spirit of the island. And that's in, I'm sure, all over the Caribbean, right? Just that feeling of living life on your own terms and tapping into your power. And when any woman puts on the clothes, I want them to feel that. When they see the garments anywhere, I want them to feel that. So I'm very, very particular in how I design every single piece and how every piece feels. Like I have to try it on, I have to feel it, I have to imagine where I'm going to be wearing it, because I want to create a memory. Like when someone wears my clothes, I want them to associate it with a memory. And that's what I would say my aesthetic is. It's a vibe. It has this feeling of power and you have the power and a carefree spirit and just a vibrant aesthetic.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. So I think that's a great lead into the next part of our session, which is really, as you know, we're focused on photography. We're going to now take a closer look at your aesthetic and the photography that you've been using in your design. So I'm going to hand over to Fernelise from Stush Marketing.
Thank you again, Joellen, Caribbean Export, for having me. It's also great to be here with another Fee who can relate to people mispronouncing our names and nicknames thereof. So yay for bonding. I'm gonna just go through a little introduction to who I am, who Stush Marketing is, that should give everyone some context for what we're going to delve into. So Stush Marketing, we are a digital marketing agency based in Jamaica. What's unique about us is that in addition to providing traditional digital marketing services, websites, and social media and that, those kind of services, we also are a full service production agency. So in addition to having my marketing hat, I also have my creative director hat, under which I do both commercial photography and film. So one of the things that allows us to do is really have a 360 look at everything that we need to provide for a client. One thing we also like to say is, yes, we're Stush, but we're also you. We started as a small business from nothing. In addition to, as I've said, our marketing services, Tamia, who is my business partner, who will be presenting on Thursday, is also a designer based in Jamaica. So she focuses on resort wear, special occasions, swim accessories, and she exports to North America, Europe, and the Caribbean. You can find her at the Tamia Carey. And I am also a photographer available for private commissions. So in addition to the work I do for corporate, I also do families. I focus a lot on women and children and relationship photography. So like true Caribbean people, we have multiple hustles going on and different passions that propel us forward. So why content marketing? So you'll hear me talk about content marketing as a discipline in and of itself. And really it speaks to the rise of the internet and social media in marketing and really becoming the forefront of many a marketing campaign. And what that meant is it wasn't enough just to have, a nice ad or a nice one commercial. You had to have content, and you had to have consistent, diverse content that spoke not only to selling a product, but to the story of your product, your brand. So you'll see we talk about content marketing being a strategic marketing approach focused on delivering valuable, relevant, and consistent content to not only attract an audience, but also to retain them. And with everything that's happening on the internet, with everything that's going on in the world, you have to filter through that noise to make sure that you're able to reach and connect with that audience. So before we can even delve into brand photography, you have to know what is a brand. So it's important that you understand your brand voice. A lot of clients we work with, they're like, why we have to do all this airy-fairy foolishness about, oh, we need to have a mission statement and a true north. But if you can't identify what the story of your brand is, what the mission is, you will forever be a one-man shop, because you cannot communicate that to your team, communicate that to clients, and be able to scale and say, you know, this is how my brand is, this is the story of my brand, this is how my brand looks, the elements, the visuals, the colors, and make sure that not just only you, but your team and your audience understand the consistent brand story. So again, why is this important? It communicates your brand story, answers questions that your audience may have about your brand and your products and services, builds that trust and connection, gets you new customers, and improves conversions, meaning that, you know, they not only see your brand, but they also purchase and keep purchasing from you. So a few examples of the brand photography that Stush has done. And I've mentioned that content marketing includes all visuals. So why are we focusing on photography? Photography is really, as a visual, can be the basis of anything. It can be the basis of your ad. It can be the basis of, you can put a bunch of photos together and make a video. You can have a photo, take it with your smartphone and tell a story of what's happening on your day-to-day. It really is the core of a brand visual that can really draw in all the elements. And the importance of those visuals, not only just in terms of being a powerful messaging tool, but also when you're talking about dollars and cents and return on investment, and you're talking about running ads on social media, posting, visuals will do exponentially better than just text messaging, and moving visuals, video, do exponentially even better than that. So really having that foundation with photography can set you up to understand your brand style, and can really be the linchpin as you now try to create what your content is going to look like. So what we have here is a checklist for creating a brand photography style guide. And like I'd said before, taking time to really organize your style guide, so to speak, your brand and what it is and how it looks, makes it a lot easier when you're putting together content, and even more so when you're trying to communicate to a team, whether that's your daughter who is helping you in social media, or you actually have hired an agency, communicating what that story should be and how your content should be executed. So we have it in 5 portions here, and fortunately we have Fee with us. So we're going to be looking at some of her brand photography and getting her point of view on each of these 5 elements. So first, telling your story. So you need to understand what the story of your brand is. I'll use myself as an example. As a photographer, part of my brand story is that I am very influenced by a Caribbean aesthetic, which for me translates itself into very bold, bright colors. You'll never really see a Fernalise photo that is black and white or like faded out. And I represent that even in the clothing I wear. I'm always looking like a circus, because even before I open my mouth, I want to communicate to, hey, creative lady over here, and make sure that even in how I represent myself, and you'll see Fee is wearing one of her designs as well. And I can tell it's one of her designs because I've been stalking her page forever. And I'm in love with her photographer, with a big favorite of mine. And just her brand visuals are so strong that I can tell a Fee Noel garment before she even have to say, oh, I'm wearing it today. And that should similarly be how you as a person communicate your brand, because it's very important, and we're going to go into that more in depth further, that you are also, particularly in the age of social media, representation of your brand. So one of the inspirations here, Kenisha Sneed, she has Tactile Matters, and she's an illustrator and digital artist. We're gonna go through this presentation will be shared with you, so it would be good to go back and look at some of these inspirations and see how they show their brand story. One of the things we learn, I went to film school. One of the things the first things you learn is that you always want to show rather than tell. People are scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through that Facebook feed. They don't have time to read your big long paragraph explaining what your image is supposed to be saying. Your image should say that by itself. And if they happen to read the caption, that's brought up. Let's see, next slide. So these are some of the images from her social media feed. You'll see that definitely you get an idea of what her aesthetic is. She posts consistently, whether it's her actual products themselves. You'll notice that even the pictures that she uses, the photographs, still have that same kind of, there's a color blocking, there's a palette. You know, these kind of shades of pastels are represented, whether it's in the product itself or in the images that she'll use to promote. Sophie, tell us, this is a series of images from one of your brand photography shoots. Can you tell us some of the story behind this?
Sure. Well, first I have to say that first I want to say I have an amazing creative team where we really collaborate to create these scenes and of course make it stand out. I have to mention my photographer, Tasia Jordan, who I mean, I talk to her all the time. She knows what I like. She calls me a fashion snob a little bit. So I'm like, I don't like, I'm very, very, very particular about the imagery and the messaging that I'm putting out. It has to always be more than about the clothes. Of course, I love pretty clothes, but it has to be super strong that people want to look into it more. They want to look into what it represents. They want to look into the inspiration. So this particular shoot, which is a collection created, where I'm paying homage to Grenada. So I really wanted to, this was in studio, and I really wanted to capture so many different elements of Grenada in this photo shoot. So like the broken boats, because when I'm in the island, we're always passing like these boats on the shore. So I wanted to build a boat that was reminiscent of that. You see sort of like the sands and those sort of things. I really wanted to give you, as much as I can, a Caribbean feel, and just that Caribbean carefree, rude girl that still had this class to her. And that's the result of us going back and forth and doing my photography. She's really good at putting mood boards together, where I'd be like, it's sometimes hard for me to articulate what I want, but once I see it, it hits me like, that's it. That's the look. This is what we need to go. Even when we're designing the clothes, and I'm super inspired by the uniforms. I was in a uniform most of my life as well, so I'm super inspired by the uniform. So I wanted to put little aspects and mash it up into one, and of course have it look like what you see here. So this is inspiration from different elements of the Caribbean. It's inspiration from also me growing up in Brooklyn. It's a little bit of inspiration from like the reggae scene. So it's all kind of mashed up together. It's not only just Grenada, the Caribbean, it's the Caribbean as a whole. And just everywhere that I visited, and how I could kind of sprinkle a little bit of everything to create this imagery. The dress here, which is a nutmeg, which is a direct sort of love letter to Grenada. I really wanted to, because when people think about Grenada, it's nicknamed the Spice Island. I really wanted to do something that when people saw it, they would know to think, oh, Grenada, that makes sense. So it's really, and even my creative team, I brought them to Grenada. That's why this is so good, because I brought them to Grenada to see, do you experience what I experience? Do you feel that feeling that I feel? and they were able to experience Grenada, and we were able to come back and create this. We did do some shooting in Grenada, but this particular shoot that you see here was done in studio in Brooklyn, New York. And you can imagine how much work this took and how creative we had to be to show the sunset, which is behind the schoolgirl uniform photo there, and the boat and the sky and the water, just really kind of touching on every aspect of things that we enjoy when we're in the Caribbean.
Beautiful. All right, well, that leads nicely into content. So, want to make sure you can hear me first of all before I continue.
Yeah, I can hear.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, recognizing your target market and what appeals to them. One of the things we talk about in marketing is creating a customer persona. So, I know, Fee, you've thought about who. Tell us about your target customer, Fee.
Oh man, that's actually super hard to do because, and it was super hard for me to do. One, I didn't want to acknowledge that, well, Fee, you are that woman, you know, like, because I always felt like it was a figment of my imagination. And I felt like it was, the Fee Noel woman was something I myself had to aspire to be. So I thought of it as a separate person. I've always like thought about the Fee Noel woman as a separate person that had her whole life together, and she worked out and did yoga and prayed and, you know, eat well and traveled the world and like all these things, right? So that's how I actually started. I created this figment of my imagination, this fairy tale type of woman. And then as time went on, I started to be able to place real women who really were intentional about their life as I am into this box of who the Fee Noel woman was or is. And what I've come to realize, it didn't have anything to do with whether she was from the Caribbean or not, whether she was black or white, whether none of those things mattered. What started to matter was an attitude. My woman has a certain attitude. She has um a certain ambition to live life on her own terms and to curate her life. It's very important that she curates her life and she creates it. She creates a life that she wants to live. And I started to notice like any woman that has that desire to do that is my woman, because that woman is going to show up for life. She's going to put effort into showing up for life. And she's going to put effort into living her life. My thing is that, do you have to, do you need pretty dresses? No, but you want it because it's a representation of it says who you are and what you like, and it speaks before you do. And I wanted that to be important also to my woman, how she shows up to the world and how she shows up in the room. And that's when I really started to say, like, a Fee Noel woman is more of an attitude. It's more about the way you think and what you believe in. And you're just, see, life can be hard. And of course, there's all these different things that we have to think about, but you always look for the silver lining. And no matter what's going on, like you see, we just had the pandemic, my woman is going to create paradise in her home. She's going to find a reason to maybe cook dinner while she's still dressed up, or do any, you know, just finding a reason to look on the brighter side of life. And once once that clicked for me, and that most recently happened, it didn't happen in the beginning. It's really something I honed in on, like, oh, my woman, she's a positive thinker. She's going to look for the good in anything. And she's going to show up as her best self when she can. And that's who my woman is. It's more about a positive attitude towards life.
Well, that is a powerful brand story.
I hope I said it right. I say it different. I try to convey what I'm trying to convey it in the most simplest form so people understand and they feel what I'm trying to say, and they even start to ask themselves, like, you know, because in life it takes effort. You have to put in effort. You have to want to put in effort. You have to have the ambition to put in effort, right? So that takes a certain sort of mental attitude to do that, you know?
And it's amazing as you speak, because particularly, you know, for the people watching now, it's important that you're able to articulate as clearly as he did what your brand is. Again, we're all working towards growth and scaling. Everything she just said, as a photographer, as a marketer, I can now take that and I can translate that into content. I can translate that into a creative brief, as Keisha does for a photo shoot. And if you can't identify your brand and articulate it and be as clear about it, you're going to have a rough time working with other persons, because they will not be able to translate the vision that is in your head, and you just assume that, okay, well, you know, well, I like this picture on your website, make it look like that. That's not a brief.
You're so right.
That does your brand any justice, because it shows nothing distinct about you. It doesn't show that, you know, you put thought into it to say what is going to be distinct. And remember, we're trying to create unique, compelling content that engages and filters through the noise. One of the examples here we have is, I'm even going to pretend like I know how to pronounce this, Alvear Jewelry. And they have a very strong style in the content that they post, with the visual as well as keeping it consistent. So
I can see it here already. Like, I can just see just these 6 boxes and understand already.
And so what, as a lay person, may look and say, okay, I see it's very clean, it seems very modern. The way we translate that as creative, so I see there's a lot of use of what we call white space. So, you know, the product is very individual, and then there's a lot of area around it. So even when I'm choosing, if I'm choosing a repost from a client, I'm going to pick a picture where they took it and there wasn't a lot in it. If there's a tree or a bush in the background, I may touch that out, and I'll show you some quick smartphone apps where you can do that in order to repost it and make it consistent with my content. It's not that everything, and we're going to go and show how Fee does it, it's not that everything you post has to be that professional photo to maintain your brand look, your brand aesthetic. So just finishing up with our Veer, we see diversity is important to them. Notice the keywords that Fee used: ambition, control, creation, that attitude. You should have those keywords written down for your brand, and then every piece of content that passes, whether you're communicating to someone else to do it or you're approving a content calendar, you should say, does this piece of content meet this checklist? Yes, I see the attitude, I see the creation, I see the ambition, and then you will have consistent content. Some more images from over there. And so going on to Fee Noel now, it's important to really choose some inspiration brands for yourself and see how are they successful, what kind of content do they have. So we were able to see from, this is going from Fee Noel's Instagram post, so she has reposts from other accounts, she has the studio professional shots, she has travel photos, she has cultural photos, there are quotes, there's food, there's illustration. So, you know, the initial thought, you might think, okay, Fee Noel sells garments, so every post is going to be something of a Fee Noel garment. No, she's telling a story. She's telling that story of that woman of ambition, that woman who creates, that woman who takes the effort to go and get for herself. And that's represented in every image, whether her brand is in it or not. And if you can tell that that's still a Fee Noel post and her brand is nowhere to be seen, that means she has a very powerful and consistent brand messaging. So take account of all the different ways that you can showcase your brand, even if it's not your own content, and make sure that you are able to post accordingly. And I think particularly as small business owners with a limited budget, with limited time, being able to utilize other sources, utilize your customers' posts of your content, utilize random pictures of a piece of flowers, and make that relevant to your brand and get content, build that content calendar, post consistently, and not be, you know, spending up all your money. So moving on to composition. So this is where it gets more technical and it can be a little more intimidating because now we get into the real photographer things. So what is composition? It's basically making sure that all the elements in the picture are consistent with your company's, your brand's visual, your brand aesthetic. We'll use that word. So you start to think of what elements are consistent with my brand. So if we're looking at size Sanko here, and we see that everything is very consistent. Again, there are only 3 dress pictures in here, and the dress pictures, if you ignore everything else, it's a dress against a staircase, a dress against a door, a dress looking like it's in a park somewhere. But how I know their attitude and their color is all these other random things they've thrown in, which more than likely they may not even have taken, they may have gotten it from somewhere else. So the bougainvillea, the pretty plates, I get it. It's not the 3 pictures with the dresses that gives me an idea, because really those 3 pictures of dresses could have been taken in one place, and I don't really get a sense of we're going anywhere. But it's all these other elements that now make me feel like we're going somewhere fancy. And if I wear some size and come, maybe I'm going to find a good man going to take me to Dubai. Their things. So I get, even from those 6 images, what they're trying to communicate about the message and the story of their brand. And here are some more as well. Again, we have some foreign places that look real foreign, but look at the actual dress pictures.
Yeah.
One in a studio, one is against the corner of a building. Looks like it could be taken in any corporate building somewhere. One looks like it at somebody's yard, and again, another corner of a building. Again, not particularly inspiring, but the way they've combined it with everywhere else, I feel like I'm going on a journey. So we like to call this creative, creative use of our brand story. And how can you, once you come up with your brand elements, how can you similarly create that consistency? Fee, I'm gonna have you talk a little bit about how you decide, the locations that you use for the shoots. Oops, I think we had. Are you still seeing?
Yes, I can see. So we everything is about energy. So sometimes I'll see a place and I'll catch a vibe. Sometimes there's a mood board and we're looking for a specific place. Sometimes we're building our own set to give us a vibe of the idea, because our brand motto is eat well, travel often, and dress to inspire. So every location, or even if we're in studio, has to represent that in somehow. Sometimes I can go to a restaurant and it just feels like, it just feels like a vibe, and I'm like, oh, I want to shoot here, and we can imagine a shoot for there. So it all comes in different ways. Sometimes there's a mood board and we creating a feel. Besides the Caribbean, I'm like obsessed with Morocco and places like that. So any place that gives me this sort of aesthetic or this sort of vibe, I tend to gravitate towards. And it could be anywhere in the world. We do a lot of research, we do a lot of browsing. I'm obsessed with like Pinterest and places like that, just to get an idea of what's out there. Sometimes it's like the 50 best places to travel, and we'll always look at things like that. Even if we don't end up shooting there, it just lets us know where we want to take the collection, and the type of, our Instagram is really important to us because it's a direct way for our customer to interact with us. So we put a lot of time into that. We put a lot of time into creating, one, glamour, but 2, infusing it with culture, and having also, it's so important for us to put in the raw imagery in there as well. And some of those images we capture a lot ourselves from being there. Like you see the pot of oil down, that was really on top of John Sandy and Grenada, where we hiked there and the boys came and they cooked, so we really got to experience that. And it's crazy. At the time when we were capturing this footage, I never imagined it fitting on the Fee Noel page, but it's infused so much culture and made it more authentic to where we're from and more authentic to our storytelling, that people are loving it. And I never imagined that they would, because I'm like, oh, everything has to be pretty and beautiful. And no, they actually like the raw things as well, like very, very raw that they've never seen before. So it the atmosphere always has to do with the vibe. Like even if we're creating it ourselves, it has to deal with just the vibe that it gives off and the way it makes people feel. If we'll be shooting a model and how we imagine the vibe, she would feel it, and it shows on set. It shows in the pictures, you know. So that's really important to us.
Well, right now I'm just getting the second computer back up with the presentation. But in the meantime, can you tell us a little bit? So you mentioned Instagram is important to you. Which social media platforms do you use as a whole?
Mainly Instagram. Like we have Facebook and we have Twitter, but it's mainly Instagram. That's the only consistent platform for us, is really our newsletters and our Instagram. We wanted to make one really, really good and really, really interactive. And Instagram, because we're also visual artists and visual creatives, it works best for us, and it's what our clients respond to the most. So I would have to say that it's Instagram. I haven't really discovered anything else that I feel like is as powerful as Instagram at the moment. You know, I know some people are like using TikTok and things like that, but I don't know. I'm not in that stage anymore. I'm getting older. I don't know if I can
Well, that's an important point to make. One of the questions we get asked, you have all this content you're producing, which platform should I be on? And generally what we tell people is the Facebook, Instagram paradigm is really the core when you're dealing with visually based content. And we join those together because they're owned by the same company. And so really, if you're doing one, it's very easy just to automate the other.
Yeah.
The ads work. The ads is one. It's one ad network. It's all one ecosystem. So I think that's an important point for makers to say. You don't need to, if you don't have the ability to post consistently on a Twitter, to be posting videos regularly on YouTube, just don't do it. And focus on being consistent on the platform that is most important for you, which for the overwhelming majority of the persons who will be participating in this webinar would be Facebook and Instagram. Just seeing if we can join up here. All right, let's see. All right. Joellen, I'm going to share the presentation with you because I still am not back up here on the second machine.
No problem at all.
In the meantime, the next one we will be going into is tone and palette. So that is going to speak now about the actual colors that you use. So the examples we had shown before, we saw with Sai Sanko, it's all very saturated, very primary colors, reds and vivid blues. So when I look at Noel, there's almost a vintage vibe because there's a lot of these kind of shades of tans and taupes and olives. So tell us a little bit about how you go about choosing that kind of tone and color palette.
I love that you noticed that. So no matter a lot of that 70s type of color palette is infused in the Noel brand. And I try to wonder if it's by accident or on purpose, but I love the 70s. I'm obsessed with the tans and the browns and sort of like these muted colors, but I also really, really love vibrant colors. So I wanted to mix them both together to create a unique palette. It's so crazy because my colleague Itasia asked me, like, how do you think of colors? And it could be the weirdest way, like, for instance, looking at your blouse and seeing all the colors that's there and seeing how it looks against the painting on your wall. I really like to put colors together that people won't normally see together. And then sometimes I'm very much into ombres, like shades of tans or shades of teals or shades. That's also really, really pretty for me.
Right.
On the other side, you will probably almost always see earth tones in any color palette that I do. I really love earth tones. I really love like these natural colors that we have that look beautiful against skin tones and that sort of thing. And when it's going to be a vibrant color, like you may think that it's a neon orange, but it's really not. It's tinted in a certain way, or it's really important that we have special colors that people can't find in other brands, or if it's a rose, it'll be a specific color rose, or like that sort of thing. I'm very, very detailed when it comes to the coloring and how we do it and how we design it, and especially how it all plays in together.
Right.
So where it originated from, I don't know, I don't know what makes me decide, because I do have color moods. I really, really do. Like, there was a point where I was only feeling like that sunset sort of terracotta, or like the oranges, and now I'm in my greens, as you see. Like, I'm loving greens and the way they look together. And I go through moods. Just like if I have a mood swing, it's like there's a point in just my process where I only see that color, and that color is the only color that looks beautiful to me in that moment.
Right.
It changes. It really does change. It really, really changed. At the time, it was this sort of not pink, but a sort of muted pink, which you see a lot of the backgrounds on this picture you have up here. I love that sort of pink. I feel like it's walks the line between feminine and masculine. It could be either or. Like, because it's pink, it doesn't have to be for women and that sort of thing. So
Right.
I'm into creating our own colors at that too, but also really how they play against each other. Like, you see the beige on the pink and that sort of vibe. I'm always thinking about that. And so this was shot in 2018, where she's wearing the sneakers, and you see how it still looks good into this that was shot in 2019.
Right.
Somehow.
And that's a good point, because I love to reuse the content, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things to note is that, this photo, you could, from the wide shot of this photo, you could have cropped this photo about 4 different ways and reuse the same photo in the post. I love to reuse, and recycle. So that's an interesting note.
You have to be smart with
a big photo and just crop it in different ways and then use it again and again and again. Because I think particularly if you are a designer, or you are a maker, where you have different elements in the photo, and that's one of the things we're going to go into when you choose the elements. Every section of that photo can be a work of art, and bang for your buck really helps when you're trying to get the most out of that content. So I think we're back online here with my camera 2. OneNote always helps when you're doing a webinar to keep your laptop plugged in. Helps it not to shut off. So making sure that you all can see. So we're on Joel, and if you can switch the presentation back to main camera. And I'll take this moment to say, this is when it's important to realize what your strong points and your weak points are. I'm a very good photographer and creative. When it comes to admin and the tech side, not so much. So one of the things I've learned is I would rather spend my time making income, doing the things I'm really good at, and then be able to afford a team who can take care of the rest. And sometimes you find your time is very valuable, and you'd find that if you put all your energy into the things that you excel at and learn how to delegate and outsource the other things, you'll find that it turns into a net return on investment. So trying to turn that little hiccup into a positive message there. So yes, yay, we're back online with brand photography. So let's skip ahead. See to show up here. Well, the next thing we're going to be talking about is highlighting people in your images and your content. So one of the tendencies can be is if you're selling a product, again, you have product photo after product photo after product photo. There is like this concept of like social media blindness, where people have become so attuned to being sold to that they tend to tune out when they don't see a person in the photo again and again and again. So not to say that your product photos aren't important for your client to understand what it is that you're selling, but you do need to have also that human element. So Fee, if you can tell us a little bit about how do you choose models who are going to be in your actual professional style shoots?
Oh, I'm always looking for just women that represent the brand well. I could come across them on Instagram. I could be looking at agency packages. Most times I have a model folder where I'll save someone, like I'll be like, oh, I love her look and she'll be good for this, and I'll save someone. Sometimes even the same with Itasia. She'll like see a girl and she's like, oh, she's good for the future. Let's use her in the future. One very distinct, I remember when we were doing the collection that everyone fell in love with, it was Itasia's idea to use, I said, I want the woman to just look very strong and regal, but effortless. And at the time, she was like, I think I have an idea of who we should use. And she showed me her. It was a Jacques Dang at the time, and I was like, yes, that's her. She was just so effortless. She just walked into a room, and it was just like you can feel her energy and her power. So that is sometimes what we lead with. Like we'll find the right person to give off the feeling that we are trying to present. You know, another collection that I was doing, I wanted like Lisa Bonet vibes, you know, just she just looked unkept but just sensual. And I was in search of a model that represented that and that kind of had that sort of unkept look and just looked like they just wake up out of bed and this is them and they don't care what the world thinks. And then we would throw these like dresses on them and these beautiful skirts and tops. So I always can describe um, I can describe the woman even if I don't know what she would look like. And then we would go searching or we would look in our folder of women we've saved over time. And that's sort of how it happens for the Grenadian girl that you see in the slide that you were showing prior.
Right.
Itasia discovered her. She saw her, and we did a model search in Grenada, but she saw her and she was this particular girl. She didn't come to the casting. Itasia literally just ran into her and saw her and was like, oh, I see something special in you. You're going to be our starting girl. And sometimes that's how it happens. It's as innocent as that when we're not even trying, but when we see, we know like that's our girl. um she didn't have any modeling experience, any of that. She was just like kind of like, I don't care. Oh, you want me to model? Okay, I don't care. And it just worked for the vibe that we wanted her to have. And I want to say it comes natural and it's like authentic. And for the most for the most part, when we have a collection, we either have our one of the girls in our archives, or we're looking for during like in modeling packages or agencies or on Instagram. for a girl to matches that vibe, because we try to go with the person that's naturally just like that. That's
Right.
naturally, like, we don't have to make them or force it. They're just, this is what they give off. And that normally works out for us.
In terms of the reposts that you do, so I remember I saw Sade was a post
Yeah.
where you choose to repost celebrities, and I'm assuming you go with that same attitude of that woman you want to represent.
Yeah, because for the most part, if a celebrity is not wearing our stuff, the image, if we're reposting something to further create the vibe on the page, the image has to really speak to us. Like, there's one of Zoe Isabella Kravitz where it just screamed. It was so sensual but so classy, and I'm like, I want to post it. This feels very Noelish. I would hang this up as art. So if it's a celebrity or someone that's known, most times it's vintage or an old picture that always spoke to us, like that Sade picture of her just simply sitting in her bedroom, just being simple but looking amazing.
That was very clever. You got her not wearing anything at all in a tasteful
So
way.
it was just like that picture was brilliant, but it was so simple, and I knew that our audience would feel the same way that I felt whenever I would come across that picture.
Right.
Yep, that's the shot that you're pulling up right there. Oh man, this just being on that set was magical. She just walked out of her dressing room and she was, okay, I'm ready. Just take the picture. And it was literally like that. Like, we didn't even have to try with her. It was so amazing. She was perfect for that particular collection, just powerful and demanded attention.
And I think from a photographer's perspective, I'll take this opportunity just to also talk about lighting. So everyone, if you go on Fina Wells' page, you'll see there's a combination of lighting look. So this is what we call a very hard light. So when you see those very defined shadows, very contrasty, meaning that there's a big difference between the light areas of the image and the dark areas of the image. And what it communicates is you feel like she took these pictures in harsh sunlight. And again, so it's like we see the sun, even though I'm assuming this is a studio shoot.
Yes, it is. And you are speaking, I don't even know the language you're speaking. That's Italian language. To be honest, I just know when I'm looking at the board and I'm like, only she would know what she's doing and the sort of like the effect she's trying to create. But in an instance like this, I would say, Itasia, I want her to look like she was kissed by the sun. And she would say, okay, and does what she does. So you're also teaching me right now. I mean, she'll mention these things, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah, as long as it looks.
Yes. So if people want to recreate this, you feel the sun and you see the sun, even though this is taken in a studio. And so, if you want this look, if you go out at noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you get that hard sunlight, and you can have yourself some sun kiss too. And we're gonna do a bit of that later. But what it creates is, you see the shot. We don't call it sweat. We call it she's glowing. She's glowing.
Glowing, exactly.
Sun.
Glow.
All right, and then let's jump ahead. So we talked about highlighting people, and you told us a little bit about the model that was used here. And then let's wait for this slide to load up with some other pictures as well.
Okay.
I shared the presentation with Joellen, so she's gonna switch over since it's taking a while to load on my end.
Give me just a second.
How do you decide, especially, you're communicating to a very, very diverse audience. Do you think about, have I chosen this ethnicity? Do I need to showcase another one? How do you navigate that?
Wait, pose the question again.
When you're choosing models and you're thinking about ethnicities to feature, how do you navigate, maintaining a diverse balance?
Well, we always try to think about that because we want women to be able to see themselves in the clothes. And we really want to pay attention to an attitude. Like, we really want to stress that. Like, it's a woman that has a certain attitude. And we can, let's say if we're scouting someone on Instagram, we'll look through their entire page and be like, oh, yeah, she's it. She has that attitude naturally. So we're not going to have to force her to be that way, or all we just have to do is capture her, and capture her in the right angles and that sort of thing. It's very important that it's diverse, because we want everyone to be able to imagine themselves wearing it. And I'm saying diverse in all aspects, in race and size and height. You'll be surprised. Like, a lot of people write and say, "Oh, is your clothes only for tall women?" Absolutely not. I'm so offended. Like, no. Like,
How dare you?
It's for any woman who wants to look a certain way and feel a certain way, and wants to make an entrance. So I've designed the brand even around that mentality as well. So I like to use different women that can represent that. Like, even now, we have it didn't come out yet, and COVID kind of stopped that. We even have an even more diverse campaign that we're working on, that's going to like bundle all of those things together, so that literally every size, shape, and color can see, like, oh, Noel is for me, you know? And that's one of our main goals. It was our main goal for 2020. And it's still probably the ending of 2020 and the start of 2021. We're going to be able to showcase that with our content a lot, even heavier. Like, you'll be looking at the page for and be like, oh, that's what Fee was talking about, So we're really focusing on doing that, so that every woman can imagine themselves wearing the clothes. Look at this.
All right, and Joe has put up some of the other types of faces you have. So definitely everybody's looking sun-kissed and melanin popping.
You notice the pattern, right?
Yeah.
That is the pattern. That is the style. I love that. I love women to look moisturized, like they're glowing from within. And as you can see, I'm even looking at all these images, and we pretty much nailed that.
And look at the smile on your face when you look at your work.
Yeah, well, because I'm looking at
that is the beauty we have when we're passionate about our brands, that it gives you joy when you're on those late nights, when it's for you and your brand and your vision. That is what propels us as entrepreneurs. And that joy, look at her joy shine.
Well, seeing a collage like this makes me feel like, oh my God, is that us? Like, did we do that? Seeing a collage like that really does something special to my heart, I must say. And this is a mix of real woman models and myself. They sneak me in the page sometimes. So just seeing it, I see consistency and I see vibrancy, and that makes me feel good.
Well, let's go into inspiration just for a moment. So one of the things that can be hard, I know for me as a photographer, one of the things I had to figure out for my brand is what is my brand and what is my look, because you can be inspired by many things, and even now you may play with something and then you're like, but is this Noel? I like it, but and how do you translate that? One of the things that was very helpful for me, Pinterest and Instagram saved collections. So one of the things I do, and again, this helps to minimize the time you spend and not make it so arduous. As I'm going through Instagram, I follow only accounts that I find inspirational personally. So for my personal mental health, I don't really follow the gossipy ones, or necessarily, I mean, if it's a celebrity that, is putting out content I like, but you know, it even creates your brain, because if you are following any and everything, you will get a mix of any and anything on that explore page. But let me tell you, when I started to unfollow all the things that did not serve, did not push me forward, when I was in a very low place, I unfollowed all the photographers, because it was like just bare, as we say in Jamaica, bad mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have done that. Oh, and I was like, this is not positive. This is not beneficial. It's not helping me. It's not sending positive energy in the world. And so I just stopped following all photographers. And I started following artists and painters and people who were creating in different ways who could inspire me, until I was in a good place in myself, so that when I now saw other photographers work, like I love Acacia, it was now, oh, she did that. Oh, how can I take from that? How can I do my own twist? So creating your mental every day as an entrepreneur is just as important for, you know, being able to represent and do your brand and that self-care as any of the things technically that we're talking about here.
Yeah, you
So
have to
that's
stimulate.
mental tool. Joe, if you go to the next slide.
You have to stimulate your mind and your brain, you know, in every aspect that you can.
And these are some of our technical tools. So of course, we're talking today about, you know, our smartphone. So that's the core of everything. I have this is the iPhone 8 Plus. This is a picture of me, which me making a funny face, which I just keep just to remind me of my inner child. I make sure that all the visuals around me are somehow stimulating and encouraged, that even when I don't feel, you know, particularly Fernelise myself, I have this vision of Fernelise and what she is and what she does and how she looks. That kind of propels me when I just don't feel like combing my hair and being that wonderful, ambitious, creative, make it happen woman. So WhatsApp. One of the common ways I will communicate with my team, it may be iPhone Messenger for you or some other messaging program. Google Apps, they're free. They're basically versions of your typical Microsoft Office suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but it's all free. This presentation that I'm showing you was created in Google Slides. I did the majority of it on my phone, and really and truly, I try and keep all the tools I use. 80% of them don't involve a laptop. And particularly in this day and age and cost-wise, that can be very helpful. So Hootsuite is a planning app, and we use that for planning our social media posts and being able to schedule it in advance, especially if you are trusting someone else to do and plan your images and your content calendar. It's important that they are able to show you, whether it's a week in advance or a month in advance, all the posts that they intend to post, so that you make sure they adhere to all those brand guidelines that we set out. If somebody can't give you your content in advance, they don't know what they're doing. Do not hire them, do not use them. It's not worth it. Find somebody else who will. Time. So we've talked a lot about time hacks that I use. So I was saying I use Instagram for inspiration, because, you know, I'm in the middle of planning a photo shoot now for the end of this week. And one of the things I'm doing, I just go right back to my Pinterest boards and my Instagram save collection that I've been building up, and say, just look through and see what inspires me. But when you make every part of your day some kind of inspiration, some kind of positivity, you'll find that a lot of that mental work has been done in advance. In terms of tools, we just went over the technical tools. If you can go next slide, Joe. Some of the equipment. So you have a smartphone here. If you can go back, Joe, selfie stick. Now, this can be either or. You can either have a selfie stick, or I have like a flexible tripod here. So this I got for like $5. You can get them cheap in any store, Amazon, wherever. And basically works as a tripod that you can use to stabilize your phone. This helps when you need to take a picture of yourself, or you may be trying to do something cool like a time lapse. One of the things I do, I'll do like take 10 pictures in succession, and then when you put them all together in one of the apps, I'll show you you've made a little stop motion style video. The flexible tripod is also helpful because say you're out and about, you can wrap this around like a gate or a piece of iron or a tree branch, and then it can also help to hold up that phone when you're on the go, fits in your purse, helpful. A ring light, if you are doing filming, especially of yourself or products, you can get one as cheap as like $75, $50 on Amazon, and it provides a nice balanced light for both product photography and for up close shots of people. And next slide. Some of the apps that I recommend, all of these have free versions as well as paid. The paid usually just gives you more features. So Canva, used for graphic design, putting words on your pictures, making little flyers and ads. Adobe Spark Suite does much of the same thing, but also has options for video and web pages. Snapseed is a photo editing app. Visco it provides a lot of different filters, so it's an easy way to get consistency in your photos because you'll pick a filter and then use that filter for everything that you post, and then it kind of adjusts the colors and hues and tones to make it consistent. VidShop is another video editing app that I use, and also just the camera apps that come with iPhone or your Android. Those work well as well, and I've taken many a photo with them. Next slide, please. So content management, we spoke about Hootsuite briefly. Some other ones are Planoly, Later, Facebook Manager, Google Apps, and all of these essentially allow you to schedule content ahead of time, and importantly, be able to look. So you'll notice on Noel's page, she has color stories. So sometimes it may be about the pinks and the taupes, sometimes it may be about the olives and the tans, but she tends to post them in groupings, and it adds a very pleasing, aesthetic, consistent look. And when you have a planning app, you can kind of move stuff around in little squares and be able to see whether, you know, this picture goes nice next to this picture. And it's just that extra polish to your brand that, you know, creates that and develops and communicates that brand story. Next slide. And then online learning. So I love to tell people that I went to school to be a doctor. See how that worked out. Then I picked up a camera. So everything after that, I did a stint at film school, but literally everything else I've learned has been online learning or self-taught. I'm a big success. So you guys don't feel intimidated to just take up that phone and get going. You really can teach yourself. You may decide when you teach yourself you don't want to do this, but then at least you understand the basics so that you know can communicate to someone else what to do, and you know when they're wasting your time, because you know, well, I could have done this myself in X amount of time, so if you can't do better than me, then I need to find somebody else. So these are some potential online resources. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to go into our live shoot. So some of the things we're going to be paying attention to: texture. We're going to go through what flat layers are, talk about the human element, and also depth of field. So just an introduction to what we're talking about. So depth of field. Next.
Hey there, just before you go on to the next slide, I just want to just take this opportunity to thank Fee for her contribution so far. I know obviously we had a few technical issues at the beginning and so forth, but hopefully, oh, you can't see me, can you? I do apologize. How very rude of me. Just wanted to say thank you ever so much for your time today. I think it's been really very, very insightful to see how you have utilized a number of these elements that Fern has been speaking about within your own brand, and really seeing how that comes to life. And now for the next section that Fern is going to be concentrating on doing a live shoot as such. And I appreciate that. I know we're a little bit behind time now at 3:30 just gone. So obviously I would like to just say thank you ever so much. And obviously if you do have a few closing words, it would be great to hear from you just finally.
Well, thank you, Joellen, and this was spectacular, and I also learned a few things from you, Fern. Just everything you discussed and talked about, it's very true when creating your brand. Like all those aspects besides just making the garment is really important with creating your aesthetic and your photography and your brand story. So again, thank you for reiterating with that to me as well, sitting here listening to you. And again, I want to thank you guys for having me. And you know, it's such a pleasure to talk to fellow Caribbeans who are in this fashion space, and just being able to hear how others have made it is going to give someone the courage that they need. And having someone like Fern, I really feel like you have a worldview. You have a worldview, and your knowledge, I can tell, is very vast. So that is helpful to other fellow Caribbeans who are trying to break into this space. So I'm happy I was a part of this, and thank you guys for thinking of me. And I have a feeling I'll be seeing more of you, Joe, and Fern. So let's continue this conversation in any way that we can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always great for us in the Caribbean to work with designers that are obviously also from the diaspora and that are connected to the region. And I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities for you. And we'd love to have you back again on another webinar. We do have a couple more sessions if you fancy joining in, and maybe then we would have the opportunity to do a little bit more of a Q&A with you as well, because I appreciate that we haven't been able to do that today. But thank you very much indeed for that. So I'll allow you, feel free to stay and watch the shoot if you want. But I'll allow you, if you want to come off camera, that's fine for now. Okay. And I'll head back over to Fern for the live shoot.
Bye everyone. Thank you, Fern.
Okay. Bye, thank you.
All right. Okay. So let me put the presentation back up. Oops, something has gone wrong.
Well, I seem to be functioning. I want to hand back to me.
Okay.
And that would be
the one you're speaking to now, yeah?
I've forgotten what I've named my cameras. Yeah, not that one, the other one. Awesome. All right, folks. So just some brief definition of terms. So when we talk about depth of field, basically in layman's terms, when the background blur. So essentially how we create that is making sure that your subject of the photograph is far away from the background enough so you get what we call that subject isolation. So what it does is it makes your primary image more distinct because everything else is blurred out behind it. So that's what we talk about. Depth of field. Texture, we're going to be looking at different textures, adds interest to your image, and makes it, you know, and we're not taking something against a plain background, which can be a look, but you want to play and see and make sure that, you know, you've explored all the different elements that could be consistent with your brand voice. Human elements, a hand. So, and it doesn't have to be just hands, but it can be any body part that, you know, is appropriate and relevant. That adds a human element to the photo. So again, it's not so sterile and we're just taking it with objects. We're again keeping in that human touch. And then a little bit more in depth into flat lay. So basically a flat lay is a top-down view, and you'll see a lot of these on Instagram where they will mix you know, have a little plateau of different elements that are mixed together and kind of taken from a top-down view. So we're going to go through creating one of those. So you'll see these kind of what's in my bag posts, kind of.
Can you just go to full screen for us, please, Fern?
Oh, sorry?
Can you just go to full screen on the presentation?
Sure,
I think
I'm
it
so
might be.
afraid that something going to break.
Oh,
Let's see.
okay.
I was being cautious.
It's all a bit temperamental today, I have to
Like,
admit.
boy, laptop don't embarrass me further. Lord have mercy. Okay. All right. Yay. Laptop likes me again. So yeah. So also, this is not a flat lay because again, a flat lay is flat, but more like a 3D typical, just placing things on a table and working with that. One of the techniques, again, we want to create subject isolation and make sure it stands out. So color blocking, so we saw some of that in Noel's images. We mentioned, I think it was Veer True Gold, how they use kind of color blocking. And when we talk about that, we're talking about solid areas of color next to each other that don't, it's not a pattern, but just a solid area. And that also helps to create isolation. So one of the things I was working on, and I had to be creative. So I'm currently in Las Vegas. I'm not supposed to be here. I came for a 4-week trip that's turned into 4 to 5 months because my darling country locked its borders. So I've been here being flexible, as all of us have had to be. And one of the things I've been working on in collaboration with Tamia is mask line. So like I said, I was supposed to be a doctor and my studies formerly were in public health, and a lot of that is still in me. And I really felt called to, as an artist, speak about, particularly here, there is a lot of issue with compliance. I'm sure you see on the news with wearing masks and how people feel about it. So partnering with Tamia to say that, one, it doesn't have to be a chore, it can actually be a fashion statement. And so I've been working on this mask series. So initially, these are some of the images I've taken recently. But before I was able to find models and all that good stuff, all I had were some masks and my Airbnb. So I was like, particularly, she has this style that you see on the left here in the pink with the roses. It's a convertible mask. So basically, and I think I have one I can show you shortly. It wears as a scarf, and then the ends you can tie it. You can tie it in a bow. You can sling it around, wear it sideways. And I was like, how am I going to show this? Tamia just said, just put it on yourself. I was like, ma'am, I haven't had my hair done in, there's a reason I have a head wrap on. I haven't had my hair done in a while. I'm not really feeling to show that. So I was like, I need to come up with a different way to showcase it. So this is an example of me having to be creative to be able to go ahead and create something. So literally, and now I'll move this camera so you can see. So I'm here in my Airbnb. So I literally went and took this table here, put the mask on it and tied, and then took the picture from a top-down view and basically tied it on the flat surface as if it were on a model. I then took the picture after that and added the image of that outline of the woman that you'll see in order to show the different ways in which you could wear the convertible mask. So again, this is how I did with no budget, no model, was able to make an image that showcased what I wanted to showcase, but using some creativity. So if you wanted to do something similar, you may not want to know how to, go into graphics and add that outline. You could source the image that you would like to print. Go ahead and just print it on a piece of paper, and then similarly you could style something around that. So that could be a pair of earrings, that could be, you could print out a hand on a piece of paper and you could put your bracelet on top of it. But really try and think out of the box. That's where having that ongoing Pinterest list, that ongoing Instagram save collections will help you with being able to come up with ideas. The minute you see something, save it, because you never know when you might come back to it. So with that being said, we're now going to try and be very creative to see how I'm going to show you all of these setups here. So I'm just going to move around this camera here. Give me 1 second. Joanna, I just want to make sure, are you still seeing both of my cameras?
I can see one of them at the moment. You'll need to switch on the camera of your second one.
Got it. All right, how is that now?
No, the actual webcam for the one that you're on now. I can only see one webcam on.
Okay, let's see, share webcam.
There we go.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so welcome to my Airbnb. So I'm in the little futon area here. I'm gonna set this up as kind of a wide shot so you can see what I'm doing. Let's tilt down a little bit. And I'm gonna take this one. This one will be mobile. All right, let's see how that works. All right, so I've shown you the selfie stick. So definitely this is the most handy thing you can have when you're working with the smartphone. So I have a few items here. If you can also see over here, let me just make sure I can see what you're seeing. All right, so I have a little piece of artwork. I went to a craft fair and bought that. So we're gonna see if we can find some interesting spots to shoot that.
Hold on a second, Bernard. We just need to make sure that the screen share is on the right one.
Okay, are you able to show both screens? Make both the panels?
Sorry? I can only show one
both?
screen at a time.
Okay. All right, so I'll also try and show you here. All right, so looking at some different items that we're gonna look for interesting ways and places to shoot it. So I have a little piece of art, bought this for $15 at a craft market here in Vegas.
So if you want to just take off your screen share, so you stop sharing your screen so we only see your video.
Stop sharing a screen. Oh, it's a screen share still on.
Yeah.
Is it on the wide shot or the close up?
Let me just, if I make me the presenter, I will then just stop sharing the screen. Okay. All right, so hopefully, do let me know if you can see everybody's, just the webcams now.
Okay, I see myself twice.
Okay, great. Well, then that should be it.
Okay, cool. All right. So I was showing you the different items I have here. I have some bracelets. Let's see here. I have some bracelets. I have a little perfume bottle here, a purse, and then just an assortment of different items that we're going to use. So the first thing we want to talk about is texture. So I'm going to take you outside. So this is really going to be live shoot planning rather than an actual shoot itself, given that with my two hands, I can only manage the object and our camera. So one thing you want to do, know that you're going to be your brand photographer. You ignore the passing traffic. You want to look for textures. Just making sure, checking in, Joel, and you can still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I think we can't see your, what you're doing as such. Bear with me a second because I think it's coming up from on your computer.
Yeah, you can ignore that for now. We're going to be working outside. So what I'm going to be showing you is just,
if we can just make sure that we've got, everybody can see the right stuff. They're unable to see the video.
Okay, so you should just be focusing. You should be able to see my face now.
Can everybody see the three cameras? Yes, you can see. Some people can. Make sure you've got your settings on everyone view so everybody can see who is actually speaking.
Okay, so the important camera to pay attention right now has my face in it.
Okay, great. Okay, you continue. I'm going to come off camera though.
Alrighty. All right, folks. So we're talking about textures. So one of the things that is important is, as now you're a brand photographer, that you become used to seeing textures and spots to take photos in. Anywhere can be a photo location if you see it in the correct way. So I'm outside in the parking lot of the apartment complex right now. So right now I'm just looking at textures. Have my wonderful piece of art here. Where am I gonna put it? So I'm looking, first I come out, I'm looking at the concrete. Now, you may not initially think this is interesting, but the wonderful thing about art is that the eye is pulled out. That instantly becomes a grungy background. If you have a very kind of maybe a street brand or a very earthy type of brand, that could be an interesting texture that you would use. Now, if you were something more leafy and green, we have this leaf background here. I could shoot this wonderfully here. And it would also be a texture that would work out well. There's this wood paneling. This also makes a background. I'm going up, there's a random column. I could set it up here, take it like so. And one of the things taking this would allow me to do is, because the background is so far away, everything blurs out and I get that subject isolation I'm talking about. So get used to looking at textures. It could be even as simple, I have the rental car here. It could even be as simple as putting something on the hood here. And when I take that, I now have a more infinity white kind of background. But there are no rules. You make your own rules when it comes to doing photography and being creative. So moving on to the next. And I'm going to use our perfume bottle here to talk a little bit about depth of field. So let me just make a camera adjustment so you can see. All right, so one of the things you want to do when you're creating what we talk about depth of field, think about creating objects that are far in the background, but also objects that are close up to the camera, to almost frame the images. So one of the things I will do often on product shoots is I will have, we have this little piece of, let me show you here. So I just went to the dollar store here and just bought this kind of sprig of like baby's breath. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna put you down so that I can manipulate that. So this could work also well in a flat lay background, spreading this out and laying the perfume bottle on top of it. But how I want to use it is to kind of shoot through it. So one of the things I will do is have the camera, the perfume bottle is here in the distance, and I will have the camera and I'll kind of just make a partition here and actually shoot through it. What I will do is, in the final presentation I shared with you, I will take some of these images so you can actually see the final result. But what ends up happening is that because the baby's breast is so close to the camera, you actually get a blurred effect. And when you're shooting through it, it almost looks as if, you know, you're in a mist and a forest full of baby's breath shooting the perfume bottle. So a lot of things that product photographers and people who work creatively with photography will use different kind of transparent and translucent objects and shoot through them. So that may be, you may take a glass from your kitchen cabinet, shoot through it, see what you get. You may take a piece of colored broken glass and see how the light reflects off of that. but play with different transparent objects, and you will be able to see, you know, what kind of creative effects you can create. So the next thing would be, we have a wonderful purse here. So we talked about the human element. One of the things you will see is, particularly when it comes to garments, not just using them as a style shoot, but you could literally put this on your shoulder, and hopefully with the mirror here, you'll be able to see. And so the image could actually just be a close-up of the purse against someone walking here. And you could do a whole series like this, being able just to show one portion of the body. And that's another way to be able to use yourself when you don't have necessarily anybody else to work with. Another thing that we will do, obviously, is with hands. And so I have a piece of fabric here. Let me put the wide camera back down and go close again. So I have just a piece, this is a piece of chiffon. So I have a piece of chiffon here. And one of the things I could do with the bracelet I had shown you earlier, yes, I mean, you see many people, they just put something in a piece of fabric, and that's the shoot there. But again, if we can add a human element, actually put the bracelet on your hand, and then hopefully even just resting it on the piece of fabric rather than just having the fabric by itself. So think about, where can I add a human element? Sorry, my braids are getting in the way. Where can I add a human element to enhance the look of the photo and to bring that human touch into things? And then finally, flat lays. So what I really want to say here is that you can really use anything. I mean, one of the things I miss about the Caribbean is being able to go outside and pick a piece of leaf to be in a photo shoot, or a rock. We have a lot of natural wonders available to us, but there's also the availability to use different textures. So just picking up different things that were around the apartment. A placemat. This could be a background for a piece of jewelry, piece of art, for, you know, some skincare products, and combining that and layering. Again, at home, we can just go out and pick something, but I have a kind of broad tropical leaf that I bought at the dollar store. So at home, we have, you know, different kind of haberdasheries that will have, you know, the silk flowers. One of the ways you can make those look a little bit luxe, more luxe, is just to either get a lot of them or to have them way in the background so they kind of blur out, because sometimes, especially if you're using cheap products, if you get too close upon them, you'll see every detail of the fakeness, and it doesn't really add to the professional sheen of the shoot. So one of the things that I'll also do is, if I'm working with, like, you know, just a bunch of things I've gotten at the dollar store, is to combine them. So I made this little bouquet for a shoot I was doing, and this is literally, I think the orchids were maybe about $5, and the leaves were like $1 each. And then I wrapped it with some gold craft wire. Where do I get inspiration from these? Again, Pinterest is your friend, Instagram is your friend. Take an inspiration photograph and then recreate the elements, and you have your brand product shoot. So what I'm going to do is actually shoot these, and in the presentation that's shared with you, you will see some of the final photos that I've taken with the smartphone. So Joellen, that's me.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Fern. Much appreciated. I think it'll be great to see what you do shoot. I think it's your Airbnb is quite interesting there with your your greenery on the walls and so forth. You've actually got quite a lot of material there to work with as such, which
well,
is
I mean,
fantastic.
they've fake recreated everything we have naturally at home.
Now, I know obviously we are somewhat over time a little bit, but I do want to obviously thank you all for your time and obviously participation in this particular webinar. I think obviously, as we already know, that photography is so very, very important, and how do you actually you know, use the tools that you have, whether it's your smartphone and other sources, in order to create those real life, high quality photography when you're a fledgling designer, or when you don't have the resources per se to be able to go out there and hire a creative team and a photographic team to go and out there and actually shoot him for you. So it's really valuable for us as designers in the region to see how that works and how it's done on a shoestring per se. As Fee was saying earlier, you know, she's had to learn a lot of it through trial and error. And I guess that's really it, you know. Obviously, just keep on trying and working with the various tools that you have. You already know that a number of the smartphones are very, very capable of shooting in high definition and so forth, and being able to capture some really good imagery. So we encourage you all to obviously try and do that. Now, as it is over time, I'm not sure I'm going to open it up to questions right now, but what we do have another session on Thursday, which is we'll have Tamia Carey, who will be joining us from Stush Marketing to talk about how to build your community online. And then the following week we will have selling on social, selling online, selling fashion online, and also preparing yourself for export. So as I say to you, so you know, we did have a question that was asking about how do you move from one way to sales. So I think that will be a great question to start off with for the next session, actually, to me, if you can make note of that. And we'll see if we can get some of those questions answered for you in the next session. Just to let you know, this webinar has been recorded, so you will receive the recording at the end. And also, it will also be shared on our YouTube channel and also on our website as well. So thank you once again. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And there's a number of people saying thank you also, Fern, for your contribution and your expertise for today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Thursday at 2 o'clock again. I look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks ever so much.